Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, Math Made Easy with Terry in 10 minutes. Okay, we're going to talk about complex number general equation, and it's very important that you like, share, and subscribe, especially click the notification bell so that when I post the next video or new videos, you'll be the first person to know. All right. So in the second video of this series, I showed you, I gave you a quadratic equation, and I told you that they had possible two solutions. And if I could remember correctly, in the second video, the equation was 5x squared minus 6x plus 5. And after we're done solving this, the final answer we got, we had x is equal to 0.6 plus j 0.8, and we had 0.6 minus j 0.8. That was the answer we got after solving it, okay? All right. Now, but if you look at this number carefully, you will see that this is a mixture of both real numbers and imaginary numbers, okay? So a complex number has a mixture of both real numbers and imaginary numbers. So like in this case here, you can see this number here, this is the real number, and this 0.8 is the imaginary numbers, all right? So basically, we always say that complex number, we write them as Z. They usually use Z to talk about complex numbers. The real numbers is going to be talking about RE. We represent it as REZ. So the real number of Z plus J. Remember that it's not 0.8 J that the imaginary number is the number after J. J, then the imaginary number, and what? Z. So this is basically how you write complex numbers, all right? So for instance, when you have something like Z is equal to 4 plus J2, this is a complex number, but the real number here is 4, all right? While 2 is the what? Is the imaginary number here. All right? And that is it. So basically, a complex number has a mixture of both real numbers and imaginary numbers, okay? So the real number part is denoted by REZ, while the imaginary part is IMZ. Okay. All right, so I'm going to write this down because I'm aware that students do take notes from my videos. So I'm going to rewrite this so that it's very, very, very clear. So let's go. So in the second video, of this series, okay, we saw that the quadratic equation of the second video in this series, okay? We saw that quadratic equation 5x squared minus 6x plus 5 equal to 0, okay? This was the equation. Okay, so that this had two solutions. Okay, so you have two solutions as x is equal to 0.6 plus j 0.8 and x is equal to 0.6 minus j 0.8. So we solved this video in the previous, this question, sorry, in the previous video. So if you just go to the playlist, the second video there, we solved that. All right. So, but when you look at this, okay, when you look at this carefully, you will notice that this is a mixture. So you notice that each of these answers we are having is a mixture of both real number and imaginary number. So you see that these answers, or let us maybe refer to this one itself so that it will be easier for you to understand in your notebook. Okay. So let's say this one, the above answers. Okay. So the above answers are a mixture, okay, of real numbers and imaginary numbers. Okay. So a mixture of both real numbers and imaginary numbers. Okay. Okay. So then a complex number. So usually complex number are denoted by Z. Okay. So when you see complex numbers are denoted by Z. So Z. So normally you see R normally means real numbers. Okay. Okay. But complex numbers are denoted by Z usually. Okay. So when you're solving question, when they say the answer is a member of all Z, so they're referring to complex numbers. So also a complex number, okay, a complex number. So now Z, okay, it's a mixture of a real number and an imaginary number. Okay, so for example, you can have a complex number having things like 3 plus J5. Are you seeing it? So it's a mixture of both real numbers and imaginary numbers. Okay. Now, if you look at this carefully, so let's look at this example that I have here. Okay. So if you look at this carefully, all right. Now, the real number is the 3. Okay. So the real number of this is 3, while the imaginary number here is 5. So the real part, okay, so the real part of Z, so the real part of the complex number, so remember I told you Z means the complex number. So it's called, so it's being written as R-E-Z, okay? So this is how we write it, R-E-Z, so that's the real number, okay? And in this example, so in this example, in the above example, okay, it will be 3. It's 3, okay? So in the above example, it is 3, all right? So this is the what? The real number, okay? Or the real part. Now the next part is what we call the imaginary part. So the imaginary part of Z, all right? So is denoted, okay, or is called, so it's denoted as IMZ, So this is how we write it. So denoted by as IMZ. So this is the imaginary part, okay? So in this example, okay, it's 5, okay? And this is 5 and not J5, okay? So it is 5, that is the imaginary part, not J5. Is that okay? So the imaginary part is the number or the numbers after the J, okay? So therefore, you need to keep that when you're having questions, you need to be very careful to separate the real numbers from the imaginary numbers. So therefore, we can now say, all right, so if we have the real numbers of 3 plus J5 is equal to 3, while the imaginary number of 3 plus J5 is equal to what? 5. Okay? So the real numbers and the imaginary numbers. Okay. All right. So don't forget when we're solving. So the imaginary number or is the number without the J. Sorry, the number after the J, while the real number is the number without the J. All right. So always remember that. So that means I can now write this format clearly, the general format. So for instance, now we can now say the general format is be Z is equal to the real part plus J, the imaginary what? Part. And that is the what? The general what? Format of complex numbers. So it's going to be the real part, then J, the imaginary part. All right, let me pick an example. Okay. Let's pick an example and just quickly move on to the next one. So let's assume we have this here. So we're told in the complex number, we have Z is equal to 3, or let's say 3, or let's make it another different number. Let's say we have Z is equal to -5 plus J2, something like this. And we are now told what is the real and the imaginary part. Okay, so remember, I told you that the general format is equal to RE, the real part, plus J and the imaginary what? Imaginary part, okay? So therefore, we can now put this concurrently. It's the same thing as Z minus 5 plus J2. So we can now see the real part is going to be 5. The imaginary part is 2. So the real part is -5, and the imaginary part is what? So we can now therefore say, all right, the real part of this complex number is -5, while the imaginary part of this complex number is what? 2. Okay, and that will be the answer for that. All right, so it's very important that you always remember this, because this video is going to be one of the found backgrounds for you to understand the subsequent videos, because in the next video we're going to talk about vector arithmetics, okay? Sorry, complex number arithmetic. So we're going to talk about arithmetic operation of complex numbers. So we're going to be talking about how do you add and subtract complex numbers, how do you divide complex numbers, how do you find the conjugate, the multiplication and powers, all right? So we're going to talk about all this in the next video. So it's very important that you subscribe and click notification bell, so that as we keep on going and building up on your knowledge, you'll be very, 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 very what? Conversant. Okay? All right. So I will see you in the next video where we'll talk about the arithmetic operations of complex numbers. All right. So if you have any question, please don't forget to send me an email and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So see you soon.